There are lots of new electric crossover SUVs around right now.
But there's only one Tesla Model Y. Yes, after a year and a half, like it's a movie in the 90s, we finally got one in Europe. See, right around now, Tesla is about to open its first European Gigafactory. And that means that if you've not seen any Model Ys around up till now, this time next year, you absolutely will. So we should probably find out if it's any good. Welcome to a very thorough Top Gear Tested.
What is it?
Well, this is Tesla's fourth four-door, after the Model S, big saloon, the Model X, big SUV, and the Model 3, the small saloon. And that's what shares its underpinnings with the Y. In fact, the Y is 75% a Model 3 underneath. It's just a bit longer and a lot taller. So think of this as Tesla literally growing up.
In the UK, Model Y prices start at £55,000 for a long-range all-wheel drive model, like you see here. The Model Y Performance costs £65,000, so you're going to be paying around £6,500 more than the equivalent Model 3.
What does it look like?
Usual Tesla rules apply here. I mean, you get flush door handles, a weird kind of amphibian smoothed off front with no grille, but that's pretty much it when it comes to details. Otherwise, it just looks like a Model 3 that's lived in zero gravity and been stretched upwards. The proportions really are quite odd.
You don't get the Model X's Falcon doors or any of the styling panache of a Hyundai Ioniq 5 or a Ford Mustang Mach-E.
My theory is that Tesla knows it has enough unique selling points that go beyond whether or not it can actually build a pretty looking car.
How big's the battery?
Well, Tesla does like to chop and change its specs quite often, but for now this is refreshingly simple. You get 75 kilowatt-hour battery, and in this long-range dual motor version, the Model Y will take you 314 miles on the European test cycle, or if you upgrade to a performance, then you go a bit quicker, but you only go 298 miles on a charge.
Now, because we're quite early to a European Model Y, that's why it's on Dutch number plates, this one is €69,000 with options. So it's right in the mix with the Volkswagen ID4, the Audi Q4 e-tron, Skoda, Hyundai, Ford, you name it. They're all in there. What does it weigh?
Last time we had a Tesla on these scales, it was a Model 3, and it came out commendably light for an EV because, well, Tesla's batteries are efficient, and that means they're smaller than the chasing packs. Now, a Model Y is supposed to be exactly 2 tons, so allow me to have a look at the scales on your behalf. Now we are looking for 2,003 kilograms. This one has come out at 1,994. Okay, pretty impressive, but that's still around 150 kilos heavier than a Model 3, which also seats 5, also has 2 big boots. Is it worth 150 kilos extra weight just to sit that much higher?
Is it practical?
Very practical indeed, actually, but it should be more practical still. You see, when Tesla announced the Model Y, they said they were going to sell one with 7 seats. But an official statement that was sent along with this very car told us, we do not have a timeline for other seat configurations at this time. So 5 seats it is, but they are pretty practical seats. Look, we've got plenty of legroom, enough headroom for an adult, despite that sloping roofline. These seats, they can recline a little bit or even drop flat. And that glass roof, it's heavily tinted, so it apparently cuts out infrared and ultraviolet light, so you shouldn't waste any of your precious range overspeeding the aircon.
You get 4 USB chargers, plenty of stowage, and the usual Tesla party trick of a big boot in the back and a boot in the nose. But just having such a big tailgate makes this Model Y a heck of a lot easier to load than the lower down Model 3.
Just a couple of weird decisions I've spotted back here though. Very generously, you get heated seats in the back and some heater vents, but there's no controls for the heater vents here and no buttons for your heated seats. It's all done through the touchscreen, so you really better not fall out with whoever's using it in the front.
Will I get along with the tech?
Well, you have to ask yourself, how okay are you with a touchscreen? Because everything's in a touchscreen as usual for a Tesla. Look, even the speed, there's no instrument display behind the steering wheel showing how fast I'm going or how much range I've got. Steering wheel itself is just 2 subtle click wheels, but look, it's actually round because the Model Y was designed before Tesla came up with that weird yoke nonsense that's in the Model S Plaid. So the same verdict really applies here as in other Teslas. For me, I prefer more physical controls because good as the screen is, it just makes me uncomfortable how often I'm looking away from the road just to operate fundamental stuff like the wiper speed or adjusting my mirrors. No car, not even a Tesla, is clever enough to drive itself yet. Having said all of that though, if you absolutely must have a touchscreen, then this one is still the absolute best in the business.
What's the gimmick?
When we looked at the Model 3, we took in its built-in arcade games, the karaoke, and the fart sound effects. So I thought we'd be a bit more grown up this time and have a think about cameras. See, the Model Y is covered in them. There's cameras built into the pillars, cameras in the side of the car, and this one in the back to help you park.
But when you leave a Tesla behind, you can activate Sentry mode, and those cameras will automatically record and then store footage if anyone crashes into you or tries to break into your car. When you're out on the road, they even work as dash cams, so you can send footage proving how nothing was your fault to your insurers. If you see one of these Model Ys on the road, then drive carefully. It's watching you. How fast is it?
Now, if I was in a Model Y Performance right now, I could expect to go from 0 to 60 in about 3.5 seconds, but I'm merely in the base model, the long range dual motor, so I've only got 434 brake horsepower to play with instead of 563. Still, you want to know how fast that gets the Model Y from A to B? Me too. So our GPS box of maths will Bluetooth some data to my phone and tell me exactly how fast we got there. I'm going to put my foot on the brake, pull this stalk to put the car in drive, and then don't forget to move the acceleration mode from chill to standard. And then we're all set. So, when you're ready, and launch. Still feels pretty brisk. We are doing this the European way, no 1 foot rollout, because 1 foot rollout is cheating. The Queen locks you in the tower. So, what's an actual 0 to 60 time? We're looking for about 5 seconds for a Model Y long range. Yeah, let's come on the brakes. Ooh, it's a little bit wayward, just wandering across the lane, ever so slightly, but we've come to a safe stop. Right, let's see how fast that was. So, 0 to 60, 4.86 seconds. So if we round that up to 4.9, that's a tenth quicker than Tesla claims. We're on cold tyres, good surface, yeah, pretty good, isn't it? And 0 to 100 miles an hour, yeah, that's really impressive. 11.2 seconds. I think I once figured a Honda Civic Type R did 0 to 100, and that took about 11.8. We're over half a second quicker in our big family crossover. And of course you want the quarter mile time, 13.38 seconds at 108.9 miles an hour. So, in surprise to pretty much no one, the Model Y is another seriously quick Tesla. Next.
Where do I put the cable?
There's space for a charging cable in either the front or the rear boot. And where would you plug that in? Well, it goes just behind the tail light here, just like a Model 3, really.
It'll charge at up to 250 kilowatts. So plug into one of Europe's 6,500 Tesla dedicated superchargers and it'll get from empty to 80% charge in under half an hour. On a normal 7 kilowatts home wall box, it's an 11-hour job.
Yeah, you will have noticed this isn't an actual Tesla supercharger, but superchargers are still Top Gear's favourite way to charge an electric car. There's loads of them, they're super reliable, and the Model Y can accept charge at up to 350 miles worth per hour. One of the reasons why the Model Y is going to be so popular next year.
What's it like on a motorway?
Well, first off, it's surprisingly refined. Often cars that have got a huge glass roof can be resonant echo boxes, but Model Y is okay. And it's obviously very aerodynamic, but I think it also might have something to do with this car having a lot of steel in its construction, more than the bigger Model S and the Model X. They're more aluminium or aluminum. if you prefer, and that's a noise transmitter. It's lighter, but it's a real pain when it comes to refinement. Steel, good old-fashioned stuff, bit better at keeping the noise at bay, and I think that's helping. One thing I have noticed, now we're out on the sort of openish road, it's just how terrible the rear visibility is. That sloping rear window and just how narrow and tinted the glass is really means that, especially in combination with no rear wiper, view out the back is appalling. And because of the way that the front bonnet slopes away, I've got no idea where the end of the car is or the extremities are. It's a good job that the Model Y actually feels quite narrow. Right, so we've done normal motorway. Let's try a fast motorway. Okay, so moved into the top lane. We're a couple of miles an hour below this car's claimed VMAX of 135. Obviously we've got a lot of wind noise. You're not going to want to cruise like this for a heck of a long time. But I'll give it that the steering isn't as wayward, let's say, as a Model 3 I tried here a while ago. That really felt like the steering kind of had come straight off a video game and wasn't connected to anything metal. This one's pretty stable. But the message the car is trying to give you the whole time is, I'd really rather drive myself. Problem is, if you do try and activate autopilot on this high-speed bowl, it gets really confused. What is your problem? Why won't you auto steer? I'll take my hands off the steering wheel and it will guide us round the bowl here. No, it won't. Oh, this is impossible, mate, sorry. It starts limiting itself to 30 or 40 miles an hour and won't give you the auto steer. It doesn't exactly inspire confidence given that this is a well-painted, well-surfaced test track. I mean, if it doesn't work here, what are the chances it's going to work on a road near you? Unless, of course, that road is in California, where, as we've seen from all the videos on YouTube, it works perfectly.
What's the ride like?
Well, not brilliant, if we're honest, and that's not just because we're on our worst case scenario Belgian pavé. I mean, come on, Elon Musk wants to build moon buggies that can take us to Mars. And Mars is pretty rough last time I looked. They better have a better ride than this. The thing with the Model Y is, it's all very simple. It's got 20-inch wheels, that's not outrageous these days. It has coil suspension, there's no adaptive air ride. But fundamentally, because you're sat a little bit higher up, the natural physics means you get tossed around a little bit more. But it's just that even on the road, the ride isn't that sophisticated. You often have a sensation in the Model Y that just one corner of the car is kind of being upset by something that the other three haven't noticed. So it will just bobble or just fidget. Fidget is the word, it's a fidgety car. And that's sort of forgivable when Tesla was just first kind of getting into the industry, getting up the noses of the Germans, being an upstart. But they've been around a while now, and I think the Model Y, as a family car, should be more comfortable than this.
What's it like in a corner?
Well, as usual for one of these super headline-grabbing Teslas, drive around a corner at a normal speed and it's deeply unremarkable. Yeah, you can feel the centre of gravity is low, and that's good, but the steering couldn't be more numb if I had pins and needles.
But going much faster will solve that.
For what is effectively a Model 3 on stilts, the cornering speeds that this Model Y can achieve are pretty crackers.
And you've got to remember, this is the base spec standard car. Standard brakes, normal suspension, unsticky tyres, and yet it would still walk away from most of its European rivals on a twisty road.
But are you going to go for a thrash on a B road in the first place? No. I mean, I wouldn't say I'm having fun, but I'm definitely impressed.
What about range?
Well, the claim, the WLTP European claim anyway, is 315 miles for this spec. Probably a little bit less in the USA, where the EPA test is actually quite a lot harsher. But I can't really give you the definitive what you'll get in the real world for a Model Y today, because we only have this car for one day. We don't have a chance to drive it, to discharge it over and over and over again, or in lots of different seasons and weathers. And unfortunately, I can't even tell you what it said when it charged to 100%, because it didn't. Left it on charge all of last night, came in early this morning, and it hadn't charged. It wasn't the Tesla's fault, and it wasn't plugged into a supercharger either. It was in a third-party charger. But just goes to show, doesn't it, that your clever electric car It's only as clever as what you're plugging it into, and that really let us down last night, so we've been rolling around with 75% at best today, and as you might be able to see, only 18 miles left. Range anxiety setting in. But judging by how this thing was behaving earlier, before we did all of the fast starts and 100-mile-per-hour running, and from all the time we spent driving Model 3s, about 280 miles is a fair bet in the real world.
What's the verdict?
So let's not pretend that it's a great shock that the Model Y is a good car. And it is a good car. And not just because people in America have been running around in these things for over a year now and been being very pleased with themselves on the internet. I mean, after all, this thing is just a taller Model 3. And the Model 3 is an excellent car. So it would be pretty outstandingly embarrassing if the Model Y had turned up and been nowhere near as good as its brother.
For me, what's interesting is this is the first Tesla I've driven where the thing that really bowls me over isn't the acceleration or the driver assistance technology or the touchscreen or the silly games and features.
It's an interesting car that's going to rocket into people's shopping lists because of the packaging, because of the space, because of the amount of storage. I know that the visibility is not great and you'd rather have a rear wiper and there are some niggles like that, but as an electric poster car for all the space that you gain by getting rid of a fuel tank and an engine and an exhaust and all of that plumbing, this is just absolutely remarkable. I know that's not as sexy as ludicrous mode or a Nürburgring lap record or the dream of an autopiloting, self-driving car, but that's the sort of simple bread and butter stuff that makes a car great to live with, especially if you've got a family. And if you add in the layers of what makes Teslas themselves really good to live with, the foolproof charging, the speed of a supercharger, the excellence of the touchscreen, well then you've ended up with one heck of an all-rounder, haven't you? Yeah, I'm afraid it's bad news for the old guard again, really, because we've ended up with what could very well be Tesla's best all-rounder yet.